Thanks everyone for attending this IGEL community webinar. I'm very excited to have the folks from Secure Envoy with us. They're one of IGEL's value partners in our ecosystem of a lot of amazing partners, and they make a great multi-factor authentication solution that goes above and beyond just what IGEL is doing, of course, and works in Windows and Citrix environments, VMware environments, and what have you, and I'll let them share that. But real quick, my name is Doug Brown. I am from IGEL. My title is Global Technology Evangelist, and I'm just real quick going to tell you just about the IGEL community because this is an IGEL community webinar. So one of my jobs at IGEL is to put together a community and to manage the community and help the community members and all the techies, and we do a bunch of different things. Our main goal was just to create a place, create a hub for all the techies and our customers, our partners, both our channel partners and our partners like Secure Envoy. So that's what we did. And can you go ahead and flip slides? And when you join the IGEL community, you're going to find a bunch of information and be privy and be informed about a bunch of information. So if there's something new at IGEL, we're going to share that with you. So it's a great way to not worry about trying to find the new information. We're going to share that information with you. Right? We do that both through a public website, IGELcommunity.com, and also really the heart of the IGEL community happens within Slack. We have just under 1,800 members right now, and it's every day we're adding about 8 new members a day, which is quite amazing. It's a very active community. We have over 30,000 messages posted in just the past year, which is really amazing, and the interaction going back and forth. We're also shared technical webinars like this one, for example, and we have a slew scheduled for the coming weeks and months ahead. White papers, technical documentation, you'll find all that. We'll share all that with you. We even have a GitHub repository for scripts and profiles and all sorts of great things that related to writing code around our API. And then, of course, we have getting started guides. So if you're new to IGEL and you say, gee, we want to learn what this amazing thing is, what everyone's talking about, this hottest company out there today, you can follow one of our getting started guides. And you can find all this on IGELcommunity.com. You can even join the Slack and join the community so you can be informed on IGELcommunity.com. So go ahead and flip the slide real quick. And where do you join? Well, IGELcommunity.com, or if you want to go straight to the join page, join.IGELcommunity.com, and you'll be informed about all this stuff, the great stuff I talked about, and even much more too. So like I said, I'm a member of a lot of communities, and I haven't seen one that's as active as the IGEL community. And it's really a testament to our customers, to what IGEL's built into our amazing partner ecosystem. So please join. And on that note, I'm going to turn this thing over to Doug Chase, and he is going to share with you the amazing stuff that Secure Envoy is doing. And I'm going to put myself on mute for a little bit and be an attendee and look and be excited about learning what these guys are doing. So on that,
great.
Doug, it's your show, buddy.
Sounds good. I appreciate it, Doug. And yeah, Doug and I have a bit of a long history together. We have some Citrix veterans on the line, so I've known Doug in the CABCC.com from the old days. So it's a real pleasure to be able to host this with IGEL and Doug Brown in particular. So you're in good hands with the IGEL community with him. So just kind of doing a quick introduction here. Oops. There we go. So by introduction, my name is Doug Chase. I'm the Vice President of the Americas for Secure Envoy, and we're actually based just outside of Chicago, here in Naperville, Illinois. And also with me, we have Mike Agero, who's my Director of Engineering, and who's going to be demonstrating the product for you once we kind of go through a few introductory slides, just to kind of tell you where things are at with multi-factor authentication. That's a little bit of background. Secure Envoy was founded in 2003. We were headquartered, as I mentioned, in Naperville, Illinois, and we were one of the original inventors and pioneers of tokenless two-factor authentication. So one of our founders, Andy Kemschall, who worked for RSA, decided that he didn't like tokens and decided to create a solution for SMS messaging to receive your secure token, and things just kind of took off from there. So we do have thousands of customers globally, well over 100,000 end users using our products. We are global, operating in 45 countries. In 2017, we were purchased by an investment equity group, the Shearwater Group, who have made significant investments in personnel as well as the innovations that we have coming down the pipe that we are really excited about, particularly along the lines of multi-factor authentication, data leakage prevention, and identity access management in general. So, and just by way of note, we are a Citrix Ready Premier partner, and we're also an IGEL technology partner. So we're very excited to be hosting this with these fine folks. So some of this might be redundant, but I think it's always good to point out, just looking at the entire cybersecurity landscape, right? So the new 2018 data breach investigation report just came out from Verizon, which echoes a lot of these same type of statistics. But long story short, 81% of all data breaches are caused by hacked and weak passwords. You don't have to look very far to type in a Google search term and do password and data breach. You will see many examples. 75% are perpetrated by outsiders, so these are bad actors coming in to do damage to organizations. Almost a full quarter involve financial institutions, followed by healthcare, public sector, retail, and hospitality. No surprise about financial institutions, that's where the money is. Healthcare, also a very popular target, because healthcare records are one of the most expensive and valuable pieces of data on the dark web that exists. Of course, 73% were financially motivated, so no surprises there. The reason that 81% of all data breaches are caused by weak and stolen passwords is because it's the single easiest way to be able to gain entry into your environment, right? So you can have everything done right within your infrastructure. You could have everything patched. You could have intrusion detection. You could have VPN. You could have all these things, and those are all important. But if you have a login event that's unprotected, or it's just protected with a username and password, chances are it probably has already been stolen already. Number one, and number two, passwords are so weak in general that it's not very difficult to do a brute force attack on them as well. So they're absolutely the lowest hanging fruit. Users always have terrible passwords, and I know this because I'm a user and I have a terrible password. And everybody I know has terrible passwords. So these are not surprising. And of course, the reason is that complicated passwords are very hard to enforce, if they're enforceable at all. So you could have it multiple digits, and you could have special characters and all that type of thing. Chances are 2 or 3 days later, you're going to get a call from help desk having to reset the password anyways. Users do have all the access, right? So when you think about what the end user has access to, they have access to the portals, they have access to the applications, they have access to everything within your environment. And so, because of that, hackers know this, and they're very easy to exploit. Phishing attacks are successful. Using stolen names and credentials is successful. Hackers keep going back to that well because it's the single most easiest way to be able to breach an organization. And these are just a few of the ways that a hacker could get access into the environment: brute force, spidering, keylogger, shoulder surfing, right? It's just not safe. So what is multi-factor authentication? So multi-factor authentication is not a mystery technology. It's been around forever, and we probably all used it in some way, shape, or form over the years. But the long story short is that you have your username and your password. That's the first factor, and then some sort of token, secure token, is delivered that's uniquely yours. That's what determines that you are who you say you are. Right, so MFA is used to increase security by requiring to provide something which is the password, something you have, like a mobile device or hardware token. And these two distinct authentications is what makes you prove that you're you. So the problem with a single-factor authentication is pretty straightforward, right? It's easily compromised. What we just talked about, passwords are weak. Users reject strong passwords, so even if you try to impose this within your organization, users are going to push back. Hackers are, generally speaking, I could say that hackers probably already know your username and password. So when a hacker goes to breach an organization, the first thing they're doing is not going and stealing a bunch of money. They're going to go for the user domain, usernames and passwords first, and then come back to it, because that's the single most valuable asset that an organization has within their data infrastructure. It's the keys of the kingdom. And it is the single biggest target. So if you think of all the data breaches that happen across all organizations, 81% of them are caused by this issue. And these are just some recent ones in the news. Once again, you don't have to Google very much to find these. Deloitte suffers catastrophic data breach, the Vivo channels, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, eBay, PayPal, LinkedIn. I could go on and on, right? It's a serious issue. So when we talk about 360 degrees of multi-factor authentication, you know, kind of what are we talking about? So prospects and customers that we talk to, a lot of times they ask us, you know, we have a specific use case that we have in mind for multi-factor authentication, but how are other people using it? What else are they doing? And so this answers some of those questions. So why are organizations employing this technology, right? So regulatory compliance, number one. We see a lot of HIPAA, GDPR, PCI compliance, the Criminal Justice Information System, CJIS. All of these regulations have a component within them that insists on multi-factor authentication as a compliance factor for the guidelines, right? So frankly, just from a regulatory compliance standpoint, a lot of organizations just have to, whether they want to or not, deploy this technology, because the compliance regulations understand that this is probably one of the single biggest ways that you can protect yourself in your organization. Securing desktop applications, securing cloud applications, third-party access, right? So if you're an organization that is working with business partners and vendors and things like that, chances are you may have a portal that you're using where these partners are getting access to, you know, do purchase orders and, you know, do other things to manage their account, right? So a lot of hacks are caused, not that the Target stores was hacked in this way, right? The hacker was not directly going against Target. What they did was they went and behind the scenes through an HVAC vendor that was dealing with Target and got in like that. You know, so the Target vendor database and portal was unprotected, and of course the HVAC vendor was unprotected as well. So while it's good to see all the employees and things like that being taken care of, a lot of organizations do kind of forget about the business partners that they're dealing with and the type of access that they have. And just as a cybersecurity best practice, right? So if you do take cybersecurity seriously, and I certainly hope you do, you know, then you are doing the right things. You're keeping these servers patched. Perhaps, you know, you do have an alert monitoring system. Maybe you do have some intrusion detection. You're using a secure VPN for remote users. Multi-factor authentication is an absolute best practice, just hands down, right? It's just something you just flat out need to do. So we look at who's using this type of product, right? So employees are the obvious ones. Internal employees have all the access. They're getting access into their HR, their ERP systems, their CRM systems, you name it, employees have access to it. These are also remote employees as well. We talked about the vendors. So once again, a healthcare organization may have business dealings with a blood screening lab that is not a part of the organization, but they share health information back and forth between each other. How is that protected? Customers. So if you're a bank, well, if you're any organization, chances are you have a place for customers or members or whomever to log in to get access to their accounts and be able to either transfer money or do some sort of business transaction with you. Right, so customers now are starting to expect a higher level of security from the people that they're doing business with. Right, so I use Chase Bank, for instance, of course. when I go to get access to my accounts, I expect them to have multi-factor authentication, and they do. I also work with some other banks where I have a car loan, and they do not have it, and it's alarming to me. So being able to offer customers the option, at least, to protect themselves in using multi-factor authentication is becoming increasingly important. Contractors, so people that are doing temporary work with you, right? So, you know, you may have a Cisco consultant that's coming in for a few weeks to be able to, you know, help you out and, you know, do whatever they need to do, and they're getting temporary access into the systems. Sometimes a big problem is that that access sometimes is not turned off. And there is no multi-factor authentication, so you don't necessarily have control over that contractor's environment, but you do have control over yours. So we see a lot of that happening with multi-factor, and then business partners, right? The people that you're doing business with, or more specifically, the people that you're allowing access into your systems. So these are the most common. These are the most common locations that where multi-factor authentication is deployed. So obviously, the main headquarters is the main location where all the employees are. We see extensions, of course, into branch and regional offices. So, for instance, John Deere, has their corporation here in Illinois, their prime corporation, but they have dealer services all across the country. Dealer services has access into John Deere's corporate systems, right, into the dealer portal, where all sorts of interesting things can happen, right? Are we protecting the branch and regional offices? The work at home remote, so the people that are working at home, once again, a lot of times you don't have control over that particular environment. The employee does or the worker does, but you do have control over how they're logging in and the security in which they're logging into, either a virtualized environment, through a VPN, any number of different ways. External partners we discussed, and then customer login locations. So basically anywhere somebody is logging into your system to do anything, right? To get access to their account, to work up a PO, anything that they're doing, is it being protected? Because from our perspective, any login event in your systems is a potential data breach waiting to happen if it's unprotected. So the reason I call this 360 degrees of multi-factor authentication is because I wanted to take a holistic look at how organizations are using this technology, and maybe hopefully just give you some ideas on maybe ways that you might not have thought of in terms of deploying this type of a solution, right? So the questions that we ask, right? So when we're talking to organizations and we're doing kind of a qualifying call, these are the main questions that we want to know, right? First off, why are you deploying it at all? Did a data breach just happen? Are you in the middle of a fraud scenario, where a hacker is actively stealing from the company and you need to lock things down? Are you trying to be proactive? Do you have some sort of regulatory compliance issue that you need dealt with? Right? What is the main cause for looking at this technology? And then who are you deploying the MFA to? Is it going to be for customers? Is it going to be for employees, your external vendors? All of the above, some of the above. Where are you going to be deploying it? So is this going to be an on-premise type of solution? Is this going to be a cloud solution? Would you like to set it up as a virtual security appliance? Are you going to be delivering it to the regionals, to remote? Is it just staying internally? Right. So where are you actually deploying this technology? And what risk are you mitigating? Right. So the fact that you're looking at multi-factor authentication is important and quite awesome, but you are doing it for a reason. So is it to mitigate people potentially getting into your cloud solutions or your portals or anything else that you're serving up to employees, partners, and customers? And what's the impact on the bottom line, right? So if there's always the question that if you do this, you will save this amount of money. In the case with a multi-factor authentication solution, if you don't do it, what is the potential impact? And that's something certainly to think about. These are some common use case scenarios that we've come up with. Credit unions want customer support to challenge members. So we're dealing with a lot of credit unions right now where bad actors are using stolen credentials to call into customer service help desk. They're giving the right answers, and then they're able to transfer and change money and do whatever they want to as if they were the actual credit card member. So this credit union wants to be able to actually challenge the person on the phone with a multi-factor authenticated token. Healthcare needs to impose controls on external vendors, partners, and labs, right? So if we look at Aurora Healthcare or Rush Healthcare here in Chicago, it's all good news that, there's protection, internally within the healthcare system, but, are there external portals that these vendors and partners and labs getting into? Are these protected? Law firms need to protect their intellectual assets. Retail needs to protect access to the customer data. Manufacturing needs to protect intellectual property and logistics. So we're seeing a lot more manufacturing deploying this type of technology. Education, of course, needs to protect student and faculty data. Government needs to protect citizen data critical systems. So we talk about the bottom line. Multi-factor authentication, while it's not an old solution, it's certainly one that's kind of coming into vogue right now because so many data breaches are caused by the lack of it. right? So, and the cost of multi-factor authentication, at least the cost of ours, is quite inexpensive versus the value that you get from it. So it dramatically improves cybersecurity for very reasonable costs. It's probably one of the single biggest things you can do to improve your cybersecurity posture. Multiple authentication methods to suit user needs. So with our particular product, we have about 15 different ways potentially that you can deliver a token to an end user, right? So we can do push notifications. We can do it as an app on the phone. We could do it through SMS. We can do it through voice. We can do near field communications, all sorts of different ways. And the reason we do this is because adopting new technology for end users can be difficult and change is hard. So we do try to make it as easy as possible for the end user to be able to accept and adopt this type of technology. Unique one-time password for each transaction and login, right? So when you're using multi-factor, your password essentially doesn't even matter anymore because you're not logging in unless you have that single unique 6-digit or 8-digit token code that is uniquely yours. So your password could be password, it wouldn't matter. Significantly reduces identity theft, hacking, and phishing the people problems. Multi-factor authentication for third-party consultant partners and vendors. And I really illustrate this because, well, a lot of organizations are deploying multi-factor inside their organizations for their employees. We see a lot of missed potential opportunity, with all the external people that these organizations are dealing with and allowing to get into systems. Because frankly, there's probably a bigger chance of a hacker getting in through somebody that you're doing business with rather than a direct employee. Although phishing emails, of course, are still pretty popular. Safer remote worker access. So even though you don't have control over that remote worker's environment, you do have control over yours. Hackers will move on to easier targets. So if they send a bot out looking for low-hanging fruit of websites and portals that are unprotected, once a hacker finds out that it's protected with multi-factor authentication, they're going to move on to easier targets because there's so many organizations that don't deploy this technology, and they're certainly not going to spend enormous amounts of time trying to figure out a way around the MFA unless they're very highly motivated, and most can find easier targets anyways. And then ultimately lower operational costs via less help desk calls, right? Because if the password doesn't matter, or it matters, but I mean, if the password is inconsequential, because you're using multi-factor authentication, ultimately it makes the employees' lives much easier. So that is my piece. You can visit us at www.secureonvoy.com. We do have 30-day full trial evaluations of a product. So we encourage you to please take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and I think pass it over to Mike. Unless we have any immediate questions, Doug.
No questions at this time. So, and that sounded really, really great. Guys, as we move into the demo, if you have any questions, please use the questions piece to ask, and we'll get to those. Now, seeing is always believing, right? I'm looking forward to seeing it.
It's time to get the talking head out of the way and let the engineer do his job.
I don't know about that, but I have a very soft place in my heart for engineers, so can't criticize either one of you.
Yep. Okay, Mike, I just passed the ball.
All right, copy that. I have the ball. Hey guys, this is Mike Ugero. I'm the Director of Engineering here for Secure Envoy North America, and I'd like to take some time to show you a couple of things that we do during our demonstrations. This is a live environment. I'm an engineer by trade, so I'll be able to show you guys the ins and outs of the product. You're going to see it live. This is a real world example. So this URL is real world. This is my actual phone that I dial into meetings with, so you guys will be able to see everything as we go through it. So we're going to go ahead and get logged into the management console for the product. And as I do this, on the right hand side, you're going to see my phone receive a push notification. And as I receive that push notification, I'm going to click accept to that. That's going to return a positive response back to the Secure Envoy server, and it's going to go ahead and let me into the management console. Because I usually get away from leaving the phone on the screen for the entire demonstration, I wanted to show our smart authenticator for a quick second. Wanted to make sure that you guys understand that it's good for more than just us, right? So I've currently got it configured to provide me security on my Facebook account, my Amazon shopping account, and of course the Secure Envoy lab environment that we show off to customers. But you can use it for a variety of things. So users can sort of consolidate their multi-factor space into a single authenticator. All right, with that being said, I'll move through the product a little bit. We'll take a look at the last 30 days. Over here, you can see that I've got 45 successful logins. I've got 32 failures. I do demonstrate failures, so that's why those are there, to show people what it looks like when it doesn't work. Down here on the left, you can see the last 10 transactions in the log. This gives the typical admin the sort of a bird's eye view of what's happening. So you can see here that my Active Directory password was accepted, that a Google push notification was sent, and that I clicked accept on the mobile device. Over here on the right-hand side, all these green check marks are great because those are all of our outbound services, including the Microsoft push service, if anyone still has a Microsoft phone. Down here on the left, you can see that all of our services on the actual virtual appliance on the product are currently up and running. Easy restart of services here if you need to. On the right-hand side here is our Active Directory or LDAP connectivity status. So you can see I've got two domain controllers here. This is typical Active Directory, but you can see that I'm using a secure port encrypted at 636. Down here at the bottom is kind of spiky because it's in the lab. We don't use it that often, but in a normal environment, this would be more level and flat, but you'd be able to detect spikes in issues, right? So if you got high failure days, you'd be able to see on March 15th that there was a high amount of failures. As we go down, I'll take a quick look through over the domain connections. Any LDAP environment really is fine. You can have as many different connections to LDAP environments as you like. This allows you to if your organization purchased another company and suddenly you have to manage 2 Active Directories or more, I know this is common in the healthcare space, there's always a handful of Active Directories to manage. You can manage them all here. So this is the connectivity from the Secure Envoy server for authentication out to those various LDAP environments to provide credential validation. This works by way of proxy. So if you're using, for example, a Cisco ASA or a Checkpoint firewall or a Citrix NetScaler or any of those other various components, VMware, all of those things, you just simply change your authentication method from the typical LDAP to Radius and then point that here to our server. We receive the credentials that are input into Radius. We then take those credentials and validate them against the Active Directory on your behalf. We then receive a positive response from the Active Directory or negative. And if we receive a positive response, then we continue with shooting out the multi-factor requirement that the user has accepted. So down here, of course, this is where we configure domain controllers. This is where we use a user-based service account. Every LDAP environment will require one. Things get a little bit more exciting under the configuration for user authentication types, right? So we know as a security company, because this is all we do, right? We don't do a whole bunch of other stuff and add this on as a feature. This multi-factor world is the only place we live in, and we've been here for a little more than 15 years. So we understand the user community and the human element of this very well. We understand that the more options that are available to the user, the more widely accepted a product like this is, and the easier it is for administrators to secure the environment. So we offer the most available options in the industry. We offer 14 different ways that a user can receive a secondary factor or a second token, including everything from the smart authenticator to push and near field communication, excuse me, NFC, QR code scanning, laptops. We can do a laptop agent. under the SMS and email portions, we have just a wide variety of different variables and types that you can go through. Looks a bit overwhelming at times, but it's good. It's good as a talking point, because we only have one version of our product. This is the enterprise version. Everybody gets the same thing. You, as the administrator, are put in control of turning off features that you don't want to use, rather than having to pay extra to turn on features that you really wanted. So we give everybody everything and let them decide how they want to use it within their environment. So if you don't want to use preloaded codes, then we can turn that stuff off. If you don't want to offer day codes to contractors, then we turn that stuff off. Those things are always very easy to do just with the click of a mouse. You guys can do those things. Day codes in particular are good for contractors. If you got an engineer coming in to work on a Cisco switch or something, you want to give this person a multi-factor credential, because they're going to be here for a couple days. You want them to log in securely to systems within the environment, including SSH, by the way. Then you can certainly use a day code for that type of thing. That code is issued once per day, and they can use that code repeatedly throughout the day. It makes it easy, so you don't have to revoke tokens and things as people have contractors leave. We do voice authentication as well, and also physical tokens. We are compliant with YubiKey, which is a small USB key that gets put into the laptop, where an executive or a high-value customer would just simply touch it to authenticate, to complete the authentication process. Voice authentication is not, I have to preface this, voice authentication is not the cool Hollywood-based voice authentication that you might see in the movies. This is essentially multi-factor in reverse. So a user would log into their NetScaler, and we would display 6 digits on the screen. And as we do that, we call their phone. And when they answer the phone, we require them to enter the 6 digits on the phone's keypad, and then hit pound and hang up, and that would complete their authentication. Again, proving something you are and something you have, all of that business. Of course, temp and static codes. Of course, for the lab, we do allow static codes in the lab, but just don't let Doug know. We do have some good account lockout procedures, as most of you will probably have environments that are quite large, could be hundreds or even thousands of users. When you have a date that you want to get to, so if we want to get multi-factor delivered for corporate compliance by the end of the month, we would just simply count the days. We would send out, as we go over it, we'll hit group deployment down here. We'd send out a large group or bulk enrollment request. So you get 500 people that get this request in your company. We know, because we've done this for so long, that there'll always be a handful that just either forget, didn't do it, or have some other form of question or issue in trying to get authenticated. In order to corral those last few users, what we do is we simply say, look, if the enrollment request is not completed within 20 days, we're going to expire that enrollment request, and we're going to give the user 5 days notice. We'll send them a follow-up email 5 days prior to that. So at 15 days, they get an extra email. Hey, you forgot, do you want to, you need to get this done. This sort of promotes either one of two things to happen. Either they complete it, right, and they're like, oh, I forgot to do that, and they go get it done. Or they call the help desk, and it's usually a small number of people rather than having 500 people confused on a Monday morning. So this works out really well. It helps you get your hands around the last few enrollments. You can also disable not their Active Directory account, but disable their multi-factor account, their multi-factor portion during a period of time if there's no activity, right? And you can always notify the administrator, which would be you, in the event that you guys have the account disabled. So the user will receive a notification, and you will receive a notification if the account gets disabled. We'll go over the go down here under alerting, where you'll see that stuff. So that's all good. Let's see. We do understand that people are human, so of course we do understand that they lose and drop and break, and stolen phones and other things can happen. We're all people. I think the recent statistics are 1 out of 4 mobile devices will either go in for repair or get stolen this year. So out of the group of us on the call, I think that amounts to about 3 people that are going to either have to bring it in for service and go without it for a couple days, or get it stolen, leave it in the back of a cab, whatever happens, we're all human. This affords the user to be able to log into the help desk and provide themselves with some self-service where they can provide their username and password, and they can answer a couple of security questions that they had been given during their enrollment. Once that's completed, then we give them the ability to update their mobile phone number or to issue themselves a temporary token or PIN for the period of time, and we control that here. So we give a maximum of 15 days. You can adjust that, and we basically say that this help desk service can only be used once every 365 days, so once a year. The way I look at it is that if your phone is lost or stolen or thrown against a concrete wall more than once a year, we probably need to have a conversation. So we do see customers adjusting this sometimes down to 6 months, which makes it a little better to have it twice a year. We don't want this to be used as a method to circumvent, so we try to recommend that users and administrators keep this longer than 45 or longer than a 3-month period. For group deployments, this is fairly simple. You can create a group in the Active Directory. I called mine Secure Envoy Lab Auto Deploy, and monitoring that group every 10 minutes for changes. So when you add users into that group, we will go ahead and send them out the welcome email, inviting them to, register their device. If you remove users from that group, we disable their multi-factor side of their account. So they can still log into the Active Directory like in the building, but they won't be able to log into the VPN because we won't send them a second factor. So that's always good to know. Logging is relatively straightforward and simple. You can see that because we are a Microsoft product, you can see we do, of course, record things in the Microsoft log as well as ours. You can also see that we can send out to a syslog server if you're consolidating any of that business there. We do have a REST API, so if you have any custom development going on inside your organization, you can, of course, use our API guide and send over the commands from your authentication system to this one to provide multi-factor into the developed product that you're putting together, which is excellent because we see a lot of customers using that, particularly in the finance sector. You are in full control of all the email settings, and you are in full control of all of the SSL certificates. This is not a subdomain. You're not on a service somewhere, right? So you guys are in complete control of how these things get procured, where you buy them, the strength of the SSL certificate and so on, making sure that we are as flexible in the data center as possible and as flexible going forward facing the user again as possible, right? So this provides the administrator the maximum amount of flexibility and options and features without compromising security. As we get down here towards gateways, these are all of the various gateways that are used, and you can see that we have the ability to restrict by country. We have the ability to do a wide variety of things down here in the gateways. So web SMS or even old-fashioned modems. If you have a physical server, you just simply provide some account details. You can restrict texting by country. There's a lot you can do within here. Push is push, so there really isn't any restrictions there. When we go over to Radius, we'll take a look at the Citrix NetScaler. This is the management IP, of course. So this Citrix NetScaler has a Radius authentication method created, and inside of the virtual server, it's simply remove the LDAP, replace it with the Radius policy, and you're done. So this is a very simple and straightforward process. We are two-stepping, so we are providing the passcode in a separate dialog box. It's also good to know that if you have a database-driven application and you want to control the authentication you want the database to do the authentication, you can, of course, reverse these two. So this provides you the ability to do SQL-based authentication inside of your corporate database application, and then simply use the API to send over here for the secondary check. For the NetScaler, though, that's not necessary. You just create a radius object. You just point it over here, assign it to your virtual server, and you're done. Underneath here, we've got some advanced options. You can, of course, only allow users in a certain group. Down here further, we can pass back stuff. Even LDAP group memberships can be passed back. You can do trusted networks. So if you've got a Citrix environment where you have internal and external users, both of which are going through the NetScaler for authentication, you can bypass the internal users, considering them on-site and safe, simply by putting in all the subnets that you need to here. This provides you the ability to give the user the experience that they would like in the office while providing them the security that they need while they're outside. And of course, any of the radius attributes that we have down there. You can return any one of those. From a user perspective, a quick glance, I'll just go ahead and pick up myself because it's easy. When you take a look at properties of the user, the administrator can override any of these settings at their discretion. However, we have generally 3 user states: unmanaged, disabled, and enabled. You are either a permanent or temporary user. You're either a full admin or something less than that. We've got a guide that shows you all the various levels of administrative levels and what they're good for. Phone number, of course, email address, and whether or not you're sending a one-time code like you may have traditionally received texts from other services. So that is a one-time real-time code, right? You log into Facebook, they send you a text. This is the one-time code option. For me, I, as a user, have chosen to synchronize my device and use my Android device for the push notifications that you saw earlier. This is a user-by-user configurable item. Not every user has to get their token the same way. So users get to choose, which is good. Sort of empowers them to be able to make choices of how they want to receive their token. Maybe they don't want to load the app. Maybe they just want to receive text messages. We're totally fine with that. And then they could just receive the text message and type it in. I also have a YubiKey registered with the system. So there's my serial number down there. You can see that we do a pretty good job in the GUI all the way up to, the dashboard is really nice. And then down here on the left-hand side, you can see licensing information, and we also deliver whether or not there's an update. So you can see I haven't updated this exactly for this reason, to show customers that when we release a new update, you're entitled to it because you're a paying customer, and you can go ahead and download that update here and do the update for your system. So taking a look at the log viewer, the logs here are in real simple form. You'll see that there really isn't anything in here that's excessively complicated. You can see that right here that this one didn't receive the right URL. You can also see here that the batch master on this host 1 is turning on and completing. You can go up here and you can see pin checks are skipped. You can see all kinds of stuff going on. If you want to search for a particular user, that's easy. Just type the name there. It automatically updates. You can see everything that particular user is doing, right? So you can search for that. You can automatically refresh these logs every so often, so you can make sure that if you're monitoring it for activity. Reporting is excellent because we do have a couple of good canned reports. One of them, of course, being usage right out of the gate. So this shows me all of the users, how they're authenticating. Sorry if that's small because my screen is quite large, but you get to see how they're authenticating and what different methods they're using. You can also see that they've either authenticated or not authenticated. Alerting is pretty simple as well. You would normally send this to a group or a group mailbox like alerts@company.com, but for the lab, I just send it to myself. So you can, of course, see user disablement right here, which is what we talked about a little bit earlier. You can see that there. Secure password is also part of the product. This allows Active Directory password changes to take place with 2-factor. So when a user wants to change their password in the Active Directory, this requires them to use multi-factor to approve the change of the password. So this is an excellent tool, and we suggest that everyone who uses multi-factor also uses this. We're going to get into some conversation about user behavior and things in a moment, and this is very helpful. That's the general high-level run-through of the product. There are agents for Windows 7, Windows 10, agents for 2008 R2, 12 and 16, and 19. Those are all log-on agents, so you can deploy log-on agents onto laptops and servers in the data center if you want to protect them. You can, of course, configure any of your Radius appliances, including Wi-Fi, NetScalers, firewalls, VPNs, whatever you like. You can configure it to use this. You can use it in multiple places within the organization, so you can secure both the VPN and the NetScaler under the same license. The user experience would be the same. So if you happen to be a network admin and you prefer to VPN to the company, when you do that, you're going to get the same push notification that you get when you log into the NetScaler to launch your virtual desktop or published applications. So the experience for the user is the same based on their selection, which they can change. So, sorry, had to cough. So that's a typical run through of the product. One of the things I wanted to kind of take away from Doug a little bit too was we are in a time where there is cloud and SaaS sprawl. I myself know from experience inside of this Google Chrome, I've got 62 saved passwords for all the various cloud services that I use, everything from Workday to Salesforce to LinkedIn to, Facebook to, Equifax, pick a place, right? We all have lives. We all do that. Part of the challenge with that is that high value users, myself included, have complicated passwords. My password is very complicated. The unfortunate thing is that I have self-synchronized it and used it just about everywhere. So when another service gets breached, when Equifax gets breached or LinkedIn or Yahoo or pick a place, when those environments get breached, I'm at risk. And I may not know that I'm at risk. Companies are now finally under GDPR required to release issues and report breaches. Previously, they had never required that. So your user community is human too. And the human element of that does affect us. They may not be attacking our networks directly, but once they find out, once LinkedIn gets breached and now they have your password, they know where you work, they have everything, and that can be a dangerous vulnerability, particularly since there is no centralized repository. Each of these different SaaS applications operate in somewhat of an island, so a breach over there could adversely affect you, which is why we recommend businesses in general institute multi-factor. And you're seeing more of that coming around now. So places like Facebook and LinkedIn and others are now starting to come around to identify and risk score authentications so that they know when to prompt and when not to prompt. But nonetheless, an exposed password is still an exposed password. So once they've got into your LinkedIn account or your Facebook account and they got your email address and that's your naming convention, they've got the place that you work, and it doesn't take long to start putting the pieces of that together. So that can adversely affect and expose organizations to an additional layer of threat that they never thought they had before. And we do see quite a bit of that. Another note is that as we use our mobile devices more and more often for the daily consumption of content, things like email, corporate emails, even personal emails, or both, it is very difficult, extremely difficult to detect a phishing email on a mobile device, whether it's Android or Apple, doesn't matter, because you don't get the benefits of a full Outlook client, so you don't get to see in most cases, the actual underlying email address that's used. You don't get to identify the fact that this is coming from Bank O America. It's actually the wrong email address. So when you're looking at your phone and your emails, a lot of people are falling victim to phishing attacks, not because it happens inside of Outlook on their desktop, but they're falling victim into it because they're sitting at lunch with a customer and they look at their phone, and it's an Amazon email that says that they just got charged $2,200 for something, and they start clicking buttons on that screen, and they don't realize it, but they've been a victim. And once the phone is breached and the passwords are collected, this is how things happen, and this is how organizations start to fall to breaches like this. It's how this it's the anatomy of those types of things that take place. So with all that being said, I'm open for any technical questions that you guys might have about the product and the various features that it has, the landscape that it plays in. Happy to walk through any of that.
Perfect, Michael. That was absolutely wonderful. I really enjoyed that. I'm quite impressed by what you guys are doing, and yeah, nice presentation. Guys, we don't have any questions yet, so you guys, either Michael did such an amazing job. Well, that's definitely the reason. So if you do have any questions, please use the questions piece of GoToWebinar and ask now or forever hold your peace. And well, this is neat stuff. If somebody wants to learn more, what do they need to do? Can they download and try the software? How does this work?
Yep, so they can just head over to our website, secureonvoy.com, and in the upper right-hand corner, there will be a link for a trial. Let me just jump over there and I can actually show you. So head over to secureonvoy.com. A couple of things for fellow engineers, a couple of things to take a look at. This is the Try Us link. Very simple, fill out a short form, we give you a 30-day trial key, and you can download our software. We have a variety of different methods of deployment. Our primary method is to download the software and install it on a server that you've built inside your environment. We enjoy being on the Windows platform for a couple of reasons. The Windows platform is more secure than people sometimes give credit to. We do also operate in the core editions as well as the full-blown GUI editions. And when you download our software, you'll be able to see that it's very simple to set up, easy to work with. One of the things that we enjoy, one of the reasons we enjoy being on a Windows platform for is because we understand engineers as well. We know that the majority of engineers on this call have 20 or more years of Windows engineering experience under their belt, and probably not a lot of Linux experience, maybe a few, right? So we like to be able to be comfortable as it faces the engineer as well, give them the ability to load monitoring agents that they're familiar with, remote support tools that they're familiar with, manage our server that you've loaded our software on in the same way that you would manage any other server in your environment. So it's a comfortable and sort of familiar place to be. You don't have to learn some crazy version of Linux with all kinds of proprietary stuff. So this is a very easy solution to work with. So yeah, so just clicking on the Try Us today, you guys will fill out the form. We give you the 30-day code, off you go. The next, lost my voice for a second there. The next place for you to look is over here under integration guides. We have all the popular names listed. Of course, there's more than this, but this gives you the ability to kind of see exactly how do I configure for Citrix NetScaler or Office 365, or how do I configure for OWA 2016 or whatever other system or solution I have in my environment, Azure AD, Cisco, whatever, VMware. So as it revolves around the EUC space, I think you guys will find that you can use it for more than that, but these are all the major brands that everyone's familiar with. So we've got sort of a guide with a lot of screenshots of how to configure stuff. So super easy to walk through.
I love it. I love it. And I agree with you. At IGEL, we're definitely a Linux company, but I have decades of Windows experience, and Linux is definitely new to me in comparison. We do have a question. He says, "Sorry if you missed it. Never be sorry. But how do the end users enroll?"
That's an excellent question, actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you here. We're going to go ahead and walk through it. So I'm going to say, I'm going to go back to my account because I enjoy using that. So quite simply, if I'm just enrolling a single user, I just come into the user account. This lookup is provided by the domain connection we shown earlier. So you simply click on user enrollment, and then you click on one-time code, and then you click update. That will send the user an email inviting them to come over and authenticate and walk through that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to go here, and this is what the user would receive as their link, right? So they would get this link right here. This would be the link that they get in the email along with some instructions. Once they authenticate to this, they would be using the one-time code. So they would receive a one-time code in the email. Now, because my phone's already registered and my account is already set up, you're going to sort of see it from the second time. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. I'll accept that. It normally, for a brand new user, it would prompt them to enter the 6-digit code, and they would look at the email and they would enter the 6 digits that was provided in the email. Once they're in here, you'll notice that all of these options that are available to the user are all of the same options that we have under the config authentication type. So all the checkboxes, the more checkboxes I have here, the more things are available to the user here during the enrollment or subsequent follow-up. So they would just simply say, well, they want to register their soft token app. They would just simply download our app out of the market. They would click the plus sign. They're prompted to scan the QR code. They point it at their computer screen. It beeps twice and it's done. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Now, if they don't want to use the soft token, of course, they can say, send SMS and I want a real-time code. It'll go to their mobile number. If they want to, receive it via email, they can say, yep, I want to receive a real-time code or a day code, or, these are all the options I had turned on previously. Most people don't leave all of this stuff on, but I do for the lab so that you could see it all, right? But you would probably chop a few of these out and give them 3 or 4 options that are comfortable for your set of users, and then they would choose from those, including the call my phone or YubiKey down here, whatever. So that's essentially it. As you can see through the enrollment, they choose the authentication type, answer a couple of security questions. The security questions, by the way, with the product out of the box, you get the basic security questions, all the common stuff everyone would probably know about you. So, where were you born? What's your name of your pet? Mother's maiden name? All that nonsense. And because of the Equifax breach and the Equifax data dump, that a lot of that information is public knowledge now. So we suggest that, as with everything, that any organization that looks to implement security questions, whether they're with us or any other form of security question, that you change the questions to be something more relevant to the business or the user, right? So the last 5 digits of your employee ID, or what did Doug wear on his head at the Christmas party last year? And someone could type lampshade, whatever. You can make it fun and enjoyable and relevant to things that only employees would generally know, So that is a big deal, right? And then once they've answered those security questions, then they're complete and it's over. So it's very simple. It takes 2 steps, right? So super easy.
Perfect. That is super easy. I like that a lot. We're right at the top of the hour, so if you guys have any other questions, please shoot them to me. Shoot it to us right now. If not, definitely get a hold of the Secure Envoy guys. This is really neat technology. I like that you do, other things like Facebook, for example. I thought that's a nice little trick there. So neat stuff. Michael, Doug, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And I think unless we get another a mess or a question popped in just a second here, we'll go ahead and call this a webinar and respect people's time and have call it a day. Definitely, people, we did record this, so we'll get this thing posted right away. And thank you guys very much for taking the time to do this with us. Very neat product, very verbose and great demo. Loved it.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, we'll call it a webinar. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Cheers.